Hi, hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about onions and starting a couple varieties indoors. Onions are fun because they're a little bit faster growing, so a little bit more instant impact, and they don't require a ton of care or maintenance, so they're a pretty easy plant for beginners to start. Planting onions is pretty simple. You can buy sets of onions, which are already little bulbs started. You could plant your seeds directly in the ground once you're able to work your soil in the spring, or you can start them indoors like we're going to do today. So once you've decided which method you're going to use to start your onions, you also need to know what type of onions that you are going to plant. Onions are classified by the amount of daylight growing hours that they receive, and there are three categories. The first are called short day onions, and these are typically grown in the south, the lower latitude regions of the United States. Then you have the intermediate day onions. These are right in the middle, so more of the central states. And then you have the long day varieties, and those are the regions more in the north of the United States, and those are the varieties that I typically buy. So being in the north, I can plant varieties that are long day, or I could even go into the intermediate category. I wouldn't have quite as good of luck if I went to a short day onion. So before you buy your seeds, double check which region you're in and which day length varieties you should choose from. Again, not sponsored by Johnny's, but I love the amount of information and the resources that they provide on their website. Not only can you look at all the different varieties of onions and it will tell you if they're long, short, or intermediate day onions, but they also have additional resources that explain why it's important to pick the appropriate categories for your planting zone. So check out johnnyseeds.com, I believe is their website. Whether you buy from them or not, they do have a lot of good information. Now that we know what type of onions we're going to be selecting, I'm not going to review all the different varieties because there's probably hundreds. I'm going to be planting a Patterson onion, which is yellow. It's fairly large in size and it has a good storage life. So my hope is that we will have enough onions at the end of the season that I can store some to get us through part of winter. And then the other onion that I was able to get is a Cabernet, and this is a red onion. It also has a good storage life. However, this is an intermediate onion, so we'll see how it does in our zone. It's kind of in that border between the long day and the intermediate day. So it should be fine. They may not grow to their full potential size, but that's okay. We have our seeds, we have our garden markers, our labels. I have seed starting potting mix. This is just what I have from last year. It's a Miracle Grow variety. I have a jug of water so we can make sure that the soil is the right consistency. And then onions are fun to plant. You don't have to do it this way, but you can basically broadcast your seeds into a container, and their roots are so fine that when it comes time to put them outside, they almost look like a blade of grass. You take the blade of grass and very gently wiggle, and the roots will just separate. So you could plant, I have these old containers that are about a 9 by 9. I'm going to fill it with soil, and I'm just gonna sprinkle, 50, 75 seeds in here. I'm not going to try to space them equally apart. I'm just going to broadcast them into the containers, and it will be absolutely no problem in early spring to separate these out from each other. So let's get started. If you're a gardener or into seed starting, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We hope to do more videos on the seeds that we'll be starting this year, and it's free to subscribe. All it means is that you will see our content as we post it. So I've done a couple videos on mixing up soil. You can check one of those out. Essentially, add enough water to your soil so that it will hold its shape, but when you squeeze it, it's not dripping wet. That's soil falling down. It's not dripping wet. The containers I'm using, I did poke holes in the bottom of them. I probably could use a couple more holes in the bottom so they have adequate drainage, but make sure your containers have something so that they can drain. I will be putting my onions into a 10-20 tray, which does not have holes in the bottom. So if they do drain, they will drain into this 10-20 tray, which will catch the water. This is really easy. You're gonna fill your containers. It probably would not hurt if you had a container that was a little bit taller than what I'm using here, but I used these last year and they were just fine. So I am going to fill my container. I'm just very lightly tamping down the soil to make sure there aren't any air pockets in there. If there's too many air pockets in there, I believe it will air prune your roots, and that is not something that we want to happen. All right, so I'm going to fill my containers. So we'll start with the Cabernet onions. I'll put my label in here, and they want to be planted 1/4 of an inch deep. So what I'm going to do is put a lot of them in my hand, and I'm going to sprinkle them over the top. And again, I'm not real concerned if there are several right next to each other, because they are so easy to pull apart when it's time to plant. Then I'm going to take some of the soil I had left over and use that as my 1/4 inch covering. I'll just lightly put some soil on the top. I'm going to rinse and repeat. The next 2 trays, I'm going to do Patterson in both of them, in an effort to use up the last of these seeds. What I will do next is spritz them with water. I didn't bring my watering can up here, so I will spritz them in the basement. I'm going to cover them for the time being with these trays because they came with the containers, so I will use those just as little humidity domes until they have germinated, at which point I will remove them and they will just sit under the grow lights. Onions grow fairly fast, and as they continue to grow, they're gonna exceed 5 inches in height, and I try to keep mine clipped to about 5 inches. So I will take my scissors down there and give them a haircut, and you can use whatever you cut off as chives, basically. So if you're making omelets, or if you have something for dinner that you could add chives to, you're already getting to use your onions for the year. Once your soil outside is warm enough to be worked, you will take the trays outside, tease apart each individual onion, and plant them about 4 inches apart. It's best to make sure that wherever you have your onions planted is weeded well, and that you keep them watered, consistently watered. You'll know that your onions are ready to harvest for the season when their necks, so when their long stalks, are getting soft and tender and they start to flop over. So it's pretty easy to tell when they're ready. What I do for harvesting them is I will pull up the onion and just lay it on the side of the bed for a few days as it cures or hardens a little bit. After a couple days, and you wouldn't want to do that when it's going to rain, just bring them into your garage if it's going to rain. But assuming you have nice sunny days, let them cure outside for a few days, and then you can brush them off. I usually clip the tops off, clip the roots off, and just make sure all the dirt is kind of cleaned off. I don't wash them again, but I just brush them off maybe with a stiff tooth brush. That was a nail brush. And then you can store them. Depending on the variety, some store better than others. For storage, I usually just put them in a basket where they can get air circulation, and they don't like it when it gets extremely cold, but if it stays, I would say about 40, that's when I have my best luck. So that's onions. I'm going to take these downstairs, give them a little bit of water, put a humidity dome over the top of them, and wait for them to germinate, which should only take a few days. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you are getting to plant something as well. Stay tuned for what we have coming next, and we'll see you later.